Welcome to a new series we're calling Shooter's Gallery, where I'll be talking one-on-one with a special guest. This week's guest is a coach for Team USA Football, the author of a 2-volume series book titled The Right Defense for Your Program, and most importantly, he's my old high school history teacher. Please welcome to the show, PJ Gibbs. How you doing today?
Very good. Very good. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, I haven't talked to you since 2015. You moved from Jersey to Florida, so it's finally nice to catch up with you. How's the family? How are you? How's the move to Florida and everything of that nature?
Family's good. We got down here in July of 2015. I decided to move, and at the time, my daughter was 3, going on 4, and my son was almost 2. Now she's 9 and he's 6.
Time flies by.
It does. Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, I mean, it was, hard leaving home, obviously, being at the high school for, my whole teaching career and, building a lot of good relationships there. And, it was a hard decision, but I mean, you guys, you'll see one day when you have a wife and kids and you have to make the best decision for your family. And, I'd be lying to you if I said we didn't struggle when we first got down here, but, trying to make ends meet because I wanted, my wife to stay home and help raise the kids and not go get a full-time job. And so I kind of picked the slack up there. And, but it's been awesome, man. It's, to be able to have your kids outside 12 months a year and really experience, it almost feels like, your first couple of years down here, you almost feel like you're on vacation, on Thanksgiving when you open the sliding glass door and it's 65 degrees out, or Christmas Day when it's 75 and you're sweating in shorts.
It's so different.
Yeah, and you're not, you're not shoveling snow or getting frost off your windshield. And but it's been great. I can't say enough good things about it. It was a team decision, and we're making it work.
That's great to hear. And you talk about how your kids, they're 9 and 6 now. And with everything going on with quarantine, I'm sure it's been a certain struggle trying to figure out school for them, trying to figure out summer programs and things of that nature to keep them entertained. What have you been doing to kind of manage that throughout this quarantine?
So we put them in camps early on. We go away every July. We go away. My wife's family lives. My in-laws have a place up in South Carolina. So we usually go to a lake, but we canceled that this year. We ended up going to Hilton Head. So we had them in camps a couple weeks beforehand. And then my son, actually, he'll be starting his second week of golf camp.
Awesome.
Down the street, on Monday. And my daughter is in horseback riding. So she did horseback riding camp for a week. And, I bring him to football practice with me. I think 2 or 3 times a week he comes with me. And, the kids are good. And our county has done a really good job from the perspective of giving families options. If they don't feel comfortable sending their kids back into the school, like we're sending our kids back in with the masks, they're going to go in. I'm going to go back and teach, same thing. And we go back Monday, actually. We were supposed to be – tonight was supposed to be actually my first football game was supposed to be tonight.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, we were supposed to be back to school on the 7th. So we go back Monday. The kids go back on the 31st. And, the options they gave the families were either, you go back full brick and mortar. They're going to split the lunch periods up so there's not more than 50 in the cafeteria. The younger kids get to go do recess in a designated area, which is good. Get them out. And then the teachers are going to rotate in the elementary school. So like the art teacher will come in their room and the music teacher and then, the computer science or whatever. Every kid in the district's going to have a device that they're going to be given when they get to school. The second option was online, but with your teachers at your school. And the third option was enrolling in what they're calling an E-Academy, which is still Collier County Public Schools, but it's a separate entity. It's like its own school. So you don't know what teacher you're getting. You could be zoned for Palmetto Ridge, but you could be getting a teacher from Gulf Coast or Naples High School.
Okay.
So it's kind of like you guys doing it in Sayreville, but not knowing if you're going to get a teacher from like Piscataway or like JFK Island or, anything like that,
Yeah, that's a very different experience, I'm sure, for kids actually going into that E-Academy.
Yeah, no. So and then the last option is homeschooling, where the parent is the teacher and things like that. So 4 options I think are pretty viable. And depending on what your family situation is, like our kids need to get to school and get socialization and get out of the house. And like I said, I'm going back to school. My wife is working full time, and so we just decided that that's what we're going to do. And the kids are psyched about it because they get to go see their friends and kind of get back to a little bit of normalcy.
Yeah, and getting back to that normalcy is something that we're all really striving for at this time. And I mean, going back to when schools were open and everything was in free range like it used to be, I believe my brother was one of your first classes when you first came to Sayreville, and I was one of your last classes. So I thought that was very interesting. As I mentioned, you were a history teacher. What era of history really got you into, I want to be a history teacher? I wanted to deep dive further into this entire lore of what we have.
So probably the reason why I wanted to teach history, and a lot of it had to do with my high school experience with my high school football coaches, because both my position coaches were history teachers, so that kind of cemented it for me. But I was in seventh grade at Manasquan Elementary School, and I had a history teacher guy named his name was Mr. Rooney, and he showed us the movie Glory, and that was the first time I'd seen it. And I mean, I remember at the end of it, man, I was seventh grade. You know, you're in seventh grade. You're a macho guy. You're not supposed to show emotion, right? So I'm trying to hide my tears, at the end of that movie. And I'm like, man, I really like history. So it just kind of catapulted from there. As far as era goes, I think when I was in college, it was the Revolutionary era.
Okay.
That was my wheelhouse. I think now more with what's been going on in the country the last 6 to 8 months. Mm-hmm. The 1960s to me is more prevalent than ever, because you have a lot of political uncertainty, a lot of political unrest. Where you look back in the 60s, you have the Vietnam War, you have the Civil Rights Movement, you have 3 major political assassinations in a decade. You have the Voting Rights Act that's passed by Lyndon Johnson, and then you get into the Nixon presidency and that debacle. So I think that the Revolutionary era, kind of the founding of our country and the basis for our rights as Americans. And then obviously now with what's going on, I think the 1960s, unfortunately, I think we've made some progress, but not as much as we should as a country. But I think those 2 eras kind of stick out to me as my favorite. And then, obviously, the Oregon Trail is also in my wheelhouse of favorites as well.
Of course, and playing that game has some of my favorite memories within being in high school. But you talk about mentioning Glory and showing different movies within the classroom. And I remember watching Glory in your class. I believe we also watched The Patriot in your class. My other brother, I believe you guys watched The Last Samurai for one of your classes. What's your mindset of trying to get pop culture and other stuff into the classroom to kind of make it more fun for kids?
Well, I mean, I think you have to know your audience. I think as an educator, obviously, you're going to have your principles, and you're going to have your way you do things. Like, I mean, you guys know the different teachers you had at Sayreville. You knew whose class you could mess around with, and you knew whose class you couldn't mess around in. So at the end of the day, I think it's knowing the kids and, understanding that kids are more visual learners now. I think kind of with that disclaimer in the sense where, like, hey, and I think you probably remember this when I showed you guys the movies, is, hey, listen, this is not 100% true. This is Hollywood versus history. Like, the movie is designed for you guys to go buy a ticket and go watch the movie, or go rent something and watch it, like, right? So you have to understand there's historical premise behind it, but also you have to understand that, a lot of the stuff is sensationalized in the sense where they're trying to put butts in the seats in the movie theater to have it sold when it was out. So I think you have to look at, what class you're in, because, again, what class you can watch the movie in and have a good dialogue and a good discussion. You also know the class where you're going to have to come up with, some type of closure and some type of assessment where they're going to have to fill something out, during the movie or at the end of the movie to kind of like, so their understanding. I think that's more prevalent now in education today than it was when you guys were in school. When you guys were in school, it was all about the closing of the lesson. It was all about, like, how do we wrap this up, where now it's all data-driven assessments where how are you assessing their learning? It's gone are the days of, I can just say, hey, well, we just had a question and answer period, and people want things in writing. The exit ticket now the last couple of years has been the big thing in education. So, but I think from a visual perspective, I think it really helps people understand kind of what, certain people were going through during those time periods.
Yeah, and everybody definitely learns differently, and we're seeing that as a result of, like you're saying, kind of like the data of how are kids learning in different ways. And I think that's really important, especially going into the future of how are we going to teach our kids? Because every kid learns a little bit differently. And I know you're a very big proponent of both your athletes and your own children with education being first. When it comes to your student athletes, how driven are you to make sure that they are head and shoulders going for their school instead of just going for the athletics that they seem to be very good at?
Well, I keep it pretty simple for them. I'll say to them, listen, if you want an opportunity to play at the next level, whether that's JUCO, NAIA, D3, all the way up to Power 5, is if you don't have the first thing, we just had, I was just at a presentation for our senior wide receiver defensive back for the Army All-American game.
Okay, that's awesome.
And he got selected for that, and he's down to Michigan, Nebraska, and Central Florida for his final 3.
Awesome. That's amazing.
The first thing that a college coach will ask is, what's their GPA and test score? He could be 6'5", 290 pounds and run a 4.5 40. If that dude's got a 1.7, I mean, they're hands are tied. So I basically dealt to him like this: if your GPA is a 2.0 or worse, you have this much opportunity. When you start getting into closer to the 3s and after 3s, that's when your opportunity starts opening up. And then we talk about the test score. And so basically it's kind of putting the onus on the kid to understand that, hey, if you're a good football player, they'll find you. Colleges will know who you are, especially with technology the way it is today.
Mm-hmm.
Like we just did a combine this morning for 19 seniors in our 21 class. And I put it out there on social media, and I got 125 hits from college coaches wanting the videos and the combine results. So, I mean, it's not like back when I first started coaching and teaching where, you really had to, you still got to do legwork, but you have the technology to help you out. I think it's making them understand that at some point football is going to end for you. And, you're going to have that degree in something. And some of those kids need to use football as a vessel for education to get to where they have to go. So I think the easier and the more early on you get them and their parents to understand that, I think the smoother road it'll be. And you're always going to have bumps in the road. You're always going to have the 5'6" kid whose parents think he should go to Miami, but it is what it is. You have to kind of educate them and get them to get off social media because, his friend is 6'4", 290 and has 30 Division I offers, and they don't understand why their son at 5'6" and runs a 6 flat 40 doesn't. But one of the things I pride myself on is being honest and upfront and not being mean or derogatory, but just being like, hey, we can find them a place to play, but it ain't going to be in Miami, and that's okay. It's whether or not they want to come to realization about that.
Well, you kind of talk about your recruiting style, and you are a recruiter down where you are. What is that relationship like with the colleges and with the students of trying to make sure they are getting to the best of their ability of where they can go? You mentioned their education really broadening where they can go, but when it comes to skill and maybe some other things, I kind of want to get your process into recruiting different players for colleges. Well,
I mean, there's guys that are just dudes. There's guys that they just need to you got to nudge them in the right direction, and make sure they understand what they need to do. Get the NCAA clearinghouse ID, get their FAFSA stuff taken care of, because like this young man that just got this, honor, he had 35 something offers going into this year. So, I mean, he just kind of has to get direction, and I help set up visits for him and stuff and things like that. I think it's making the kids understand, like I'll have every kid that, when we meet in the preseason, I'll say, okay, how many of you guys want to play college football? Hands go up. I say, all right, write down 10 schools that you want to go to that have the major if you guys understand or know what you want to do. And then I'll get into this website. It's called Field Level. In Field Level, you can use these drop boxes to say, okay, I want to play Division II football in Alabama. So you go football, Division II, Alabama, and then all those schools will come up. Coach, I want you to contact here, here, and here.
Oh, that's awesome.
We do a prospect sheet for our 21 through 23 classes with name, cell, Twitter handle, height, weight, email address. And then this year, I had a buddy of mine, two friends of mine, one from Arizona, one from Pennsylvania, started doing this for their kids in the beginning of the quarantine. And then I got a hold of this guy, my friend John Weaver, who's in Mississippi. And I had to make up like these social media edits with our kids' picture on it and all their stats and their Twitter handle, their GPA, their test score. And then I just send that out. So all the colleges that I'm in contact with, I send those out. I tell the kids to save them. So if a college coach asks about you, you can just boom, text it to them or DM them on Twitter. So I mean, that's kind of like what, my style. And I tell the kids and the parents point blank, I'm not going to lie to a college coach to get you an offer.
Yeah, so your reputation on the line too. It's not just theirs.
Not only that, it's mine, but if something happens, we've just ruined the two classes behind that player. We just ruined it for those kids if they want to go there. So that's why I go back to the honesty thing. Like, if I know a kid's a tweener and can play at a high level, I will. And if he shows initiative and he's good in the classroom and he's good in the community, I'll put my neck out there for him. But if they're not, I'm going to be upfront and honest with them. This is the level I see you at, and let's try to get the most money we can for you. If you're going to go play Division III football, if you have good grades, we'll get you a great package financially. And that's okay. Because I always, the goal with the recruiting stuff, the goal is to have zero student debt by the time you're graduated. That's the goal.
Yeah, I understand that one.
The more you get parents to realize that, it kind of, kind of drifts away all the delusions of this Power 5 dream that they may have.
Well, yeah, and getting into these bigger conferences and getting even into the NFL, it is incredibly hard. You have all these Pee Wee kids, you have all these high school kids going into college, and it very highly dwindles off as you get higher and higher. But there are a select few within the NFL. Andrew Luck, I feel like, is a really good example of that, going to Stanford, getting his engineering degree, going for 4 years. And now he's retired because of injuries and some other stuff. But now he has that avenue to go into engineering and kind of move that example forward for other kids in the future. Do you show some of your student athletes examples from the NFL to be like, whether it's film or just the way they play, anything of that nature, to be like, look at this person, see how they do it, and try to emulate them, make it your own, stuff of that?
So, I mean, I'll use some NFL examples. I'll use some college examples. I'll also use the example that I've been coaching for 21 years and I've had one kid play in the NFL. So you think about 21 years of coaching and the amount of kids that I've come in contact with through coaching, whether that be through USA football or from high school back in New Jersey or down in Florida. One kid in 21 years. So it just shows you that, there's 1% of the over 1 million high school football players in the country that will play Power 5 football. Half of that 1% will get an opportunity to play in the NFL. So, I talk about, the kid's name was Neil Sterling. He played at Manasquan High School for me. He played for the Jaguars and the Jets and the Chiefs for a little bit. He's retired now. He played 8 years. He's got his pension. He's 28 years old. Brand new dad, and he's starting his life, and I couldn't be happier for him. But it's kind of like to understand that, as you get up to those higher levels, everybody that is on your team or is as good or better than you are.
Yeah, everybody's a freak athlete. It's not this disparity.
Right, you get to that highest level, and you may be a practice squad guy if you get there. Which, if that's your dream, go ahead, work for it, achieve it. But understand that it's not going to be easy. There's going to be a lot of bumps in the road with that stuff.
Yeah, and it is very tough to really manage that. Even as a young student, it's like you want to reach for your dreams because in this age, this is kind of the time to do it, using social media to your advantage and everything to try to get your name to be the highest. We just saw Miles Hartsfield from Sayreville get signed to the Panthers. That's an amazing story to see. But you talk about coaching for Team USA football. And I want to know what your experience is compared to coaching in New Jersey and coaching in Florida and how that kind of compares to one another.
I mean, I can't say enough good things. I mean, I've been involved with the organization since 2008, and that was coaching regional camps in New Jersey. And you just, it's a different feeling because you rarely have an issue with a kid because everybody's out there competing for a spot. And then when you get to the bowl game in January in Texas, everybody there's been selected, by the selection committee, by Coach Ingram, Coach Charles, and Coach Pops. Like those guys for the whole year, they do their due diligence of going through notebooks of notes and getting kids' names and highlight films and watching them at regionals. And I mean, so when you get there and you're there to coach, and it's different because as a high school coach, you actually feel like a college coach in a sense, because like if we took a high school team to camp, coaches, we'd have to do bed checks, do attendance on the bus,
Yeah.
All this other stuff. Like when you're asked to coach for that program, you're there to coach and win a football game. So you have 2 ops people with you that take attendance. They make sure the kids are in bed. They handle any issues that you don't need to be told about. So if kids are running around the hallway or something like that, too loud in their room playing Madden, we've had a couple things like that. But I mean, what kids don't get excited when they're competing against each other, right?
Yeah, of course.
But it's just you get that it's just everybody, there's all positivity, and not that coaching in New Jersey and Florida there isn't positivity, but you don't have to walk into your classroom and get a call from the principal that this kid is acting up in English class, or you got to go down to the vice principal's office because one of your kids is late or things like that. There's none of the outside stuff you need to worry about. You're just there to coach the kids and coach football.
So you've been doing Team USA, and there's really the upper echelon of the high school students going to that. And that's kind of going against the All-American teams that we've seen play on ESPN and all of that. You've mentioned in a recent interview that you're playing for your country, and it's kind of like, for me, Mighty Ducks D2, USA all the way, all that stuff. And that's something you kind of put into your kids of, you're not just playing for yourself and trying to get scouts to recognize you and all that. You're also playing for your country. What's that like as a coach? Because you are this historian, you do teach U.S. history and all that stuff. What's it like to be in a small part of that, being with these, I believe it's under 17, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what's it like being that under 17 coach and being part of a Team USA experience?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, it's completely humbling, and you're just honored that you're selected. I mean, there's think about it. There's thousands of high school coaches, all across the country that want to be doing what you're doing, and you're selected. And I think for me, from the perspective of, my grandfather fought in World War II. I had 2 uncles who fought in Vietnam. I had relatives that fought in the Revolutionary War, and it just, to me, it's a surreal experience because you're, let's face it, you're in AT&T Stadium, you're standing there and you're hearing the national anthem play, and you got the stars and stripes on your chest, and you're representing, not just a first class organization, but you're representing your country, and it's an indescribable experience. And the great thing is they put you with, they select coaches that know they just mesh well with you. Like every staff that I've had and been a part of, I mean, we've just clicked. And I think it starts too with from my perspective, being the head coach, I kind of set the tone with the organization and preparation. Like as soon as that email comes out that you're selected and here's your staff and here's their contact information. All right. I contacted 2 guys that are the coordinators. We talk. All right. I need your playbook about what you want to run by this date and this date. And then let's have you guys, your offensive staff meet, your defensive staff meet, whether it's FaceTime or whatever. Now this again was pre-Zoom before all this stuff was going on. That when we get to Texas, practice is already planned. Everybody knows what they're doing. Playbooks are out, and we hit the ground running because you have such a limited time. You have 6 practices to get ready to play on.
Oh, wow.
One of the biggest stages in the United States of America, if not the world.
Yeah.
So, I think the more organized and prepared you are, I think the more successful you'll be. And at the end of the day, man, it's about coaching kids. It's about getting them better and, making sure they have a great experience. Because, I've been through that. I've been through playing high school football. I've been through playing college football, and these kids are having the time of their lives, and their parents are there to support us and anything we need. And they give us their kids for that week and a half. And, you become really close. And I mean, I can't tell you the amount of kids. I mean, my first international bowl was 2016, and now those kids are all getting ready to go to college, and 6 of them are going to Power 5 programs.
That's awesome.
Which is crazy. I mean,
it's a good feeling, I'm sure.
It is, but I just love the fact that those guys, like, I could send them a message and Coach, I remember this. And, it's like, I got the quarterback that's going to Vanderbilt. The other quarterback's going to SMU. The D lineman's going to Washington. The receiver's going to Purdue, and the other kid's going to Texas. So it's
amazing.
it's just cool, man. And it shows you the elite level that USA football's at. And it's just great. It's just great overall experience.
You mentioned the International Bowl, and earlier this year, you got to coach Team Japan to a win against Team USA. What was that experience like? I mean, again, you're in Cowboy Stadium. You're in that electric arena where you get to have the best of the best go against each other. What's that like coaching a separate team?
Well, I was asked by the head of the national team, Coach Ingram, if I would want to do it, and I'll do anything for that guy. He's given me endless opportunities. If he wanted me to fly to Japan for practice, I would have done it for him. So he called and asked, and he said, you can pick your staff. And so I got some really good guys around me, guys that had coached me in high school, guys that had played for my head coach in high school that I've known through for years, and guys that are Hall of Fame coaches in New Jersey. And I brought a couple guys from Florida with me, and those and we did the same process. We got the playbook out to those guys 2 weeks before they flew, and they knew it front and back by the time they hit the ground when we started our first practice.
That's great.
And, there's a little bit of a language barrier, but they had 3 translators there and guys and coaches that were there to learn from us. And, we probably, I would say probably 7 times out of 10 don't win that game. But that day we just had, we made plays when we needed to make them, caused 3 turnovers on defense. And, the kids played their butts off. And I told them at halftime, I said, this is 24 minutes for the rest of your life. Like, you guys have the opportunity to make history in your country, and you'll remember this. I said, you'll tell your grandkids about this, that you came to America and you won in Cowboy Stadium, and they did it. They did a phenomenal job. And it was pretty cool to see their reaction to the win, because I don't think a lot of people gave us a chance to win. But that's why they play the game. They don't play the game on paper. That's why you got to go out and play the football game.
Of course, anything could happen on a football field. Everything's a matter of inches. Everything's a matter of who could put their game plan and make it effective for the entirety of a game. And we mentioned movies earlier when in respect to teaching, but there's also football movies that are amazing. And Rudy's one of the best of all time. I think we could all agree on that. And there's the notion of someone you don't necessarily initially see as this very skilled player or anything of that nature, but sometimes you do have a coach that's like, all right, I see where their ceiling can be. I just need to do a certain thing. What's that like as a coach I'm sure you've had a number of student athletes where you see where they could be. They might need a little nudge in a certain place. What's your mindset to go through it? And what's your emotional toll also going through it of like seeing them succeed and get to that spot?
I think when you're in this thing, as long as I've been, you don't let your emotions kind of get the best of you as if you're a younger coach. Like if 23-year-old Coach Gibbs was sitting here, he'd probably be kicking me in the side of the head, saying, hey, you're soft or whatever. And I think you have to pick your battles and choose wisely when you raise your voice or you coach kids hard. Because it's just like teaching, right? If you guys had a teacher that came in and yelled at you for 47 minutes, by the 3rd class, you'd shut him off or her off because you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to hear it. I said this to our defense the other day. There are two kinds of kids in this world: kids that you need to kick in the butt, kids you need to pat on the butt. There's no in between, right? And then I saw a video. I saw Coach Saban talking about this after a spring practice last year, and he said, you guys have 3 choices as players and in life. He's like, 1, you could be average and just check the box and just float through life and just kind of deal with whatever. 2, you can be good and want to be coached and just kind of want to be a little bit better than the average guy. Or 3, you can be great and be told the truth and be coached constructively and try to be told honestly what you're doing wrong, what you're doing right. How many of you guys want to be great? Of course, all 45 hands go up. So I said, okay, so when you're coached about what you're doing wrong, there's no rolling your eyes. There's no sucking your teeth. We're coaching you to get better because we see potential in you. It's when we don't speak to you or don't coach you, that's when it's kind of like you shut us off, so we're going to shut you off.
Yeah.
So for me, that's kind of the mindset that I take is like, I'm always going to fly around. I'm always going to have enthusiasm. I'm always going to want to get the best out of kids. But at the end of the day, it's a 2-way street. I can't force you to want to be great.
You're going to have to want it yourself.
If you feel like I'm picking on you, then I've already lost, because then you're not going to listen to me and what I'm telling you to do. But I'm consistent. I'm the same coach to the 4-star kid to the 1-star kid, because I think kids today, they see that if there's preferential treatment, they see that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So you have to hold yourself as a coach to a certain standard of how do you want to be viewed, by the team and by the community. And I think if you're consistent and you're honest and you hold everybody accountable and you convey the same message, I think your transition will be easy. Not that you won't hit bumps in the road, but it'll help you out tremendously if you remain consistent.
And there are a lot of player coaches out there. Are you still a Jets fan, or has that sale passed for you because of their dynasty that they are?
I do a lot of my work for the week on Sunday. So the NFL has really turned me off over the last few years. And two, I can't get the Jets games down here unless they're playing the Dolphins.
It's very true.
So I'd have to go out, but we usually meet Sundays from 7 till we're done. And sometimes I'll get back for the second half of the 3:30 game or the 4 o'clock game. So I really locked into to college and on Saturdays.
Well, the reason I say is because Rex Ryan, the time that you were teaching in Sayreville, he was a pretty good coach for the Jets, and he was really a player's coach and someone that the players respected, but he was also kind of that hard-nosed person of, I know my defense, I know how I want to run it, and let's get it done. And they had 2 really good years, but I mean, that panned out the way it panned out. But you do talk about the NFL and not really enjoying it as much in the past few years. What recently has really been setting you off the course of the NFL and going more towards college?
For me, it's time, really. It's again, not really being able to see the Jet and Giants games unless they're playing the Bucks or the Dolphins. So I really enjoy Saturdays, because my son now is old enough where we can sit and watch the game, and he'll watch the game with me. Because Sunday I'm usually working. So it's not really anything in particular. It's a time thing, and it's just I don't feel like watching the Dolphins or the Buccaneers. But now a really good friend of mine just got hired by the Dolphins to work with the secondary, so I'll definitely check them out, when this whole thing gets rolling. And then obviously if there's issues with college where, I saw on ESPN yesterday, they may play some NFL games on like a Friday night as opposed to a Thursday, if that's an open week for like the ACC or the SEC or something like that. So for me, it's just a time thing, really. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel like going out on a Sunday, to be honest with you, to go sit at Low Campers or something, or one of the sport places down here with all the nut jobs.
I totally understand that. You mentioned that you and your son watch games together. I'm sure you watch movies and game film and everything of that nature together. What's that like, having a son to be kind of your assistant coach, your little grad assistant, helping around and trying to help out with stats and whatever it may be?
It's pretty cool. And I wouldn't force it upon him if he didn't enjoy it. Yeah. He's going to do our tackling stats this year. So I've been kind of grooming him a little bit, showing him how to do things on a spreadsheet. And he likes it. It keeps him occupied. And he's a Michigan fan like me. Nice. But it's neat because as a father, that's one thing you could always look back on and say, like, we had, a really good bond, doing this stuff. And, I look back on my dad's relationship. And for us, it was, The Sopranos, watching The Sopranos together, or like having a catch in the backyard when he wasn't working. So I think, I think it's really, really cool. For a 6-year-old, man, he has a lot of knowledge and, he's been sitting on my lap watching film since he was 2. But it's a neat experience because now, like, the college coaches know who he is. So when they come to visit, hopefully after September 30th, when the dead period's lifted, but, a really good friend of mine, Aaron Moorhead, he's the wideout coach of the Eagles now, but he was at Vanderbilt, and he would, come when Logan was at practice and talk to Logan about football. And guys that I've coached USA football with know Logs, and Coach Brown at Michigan, knows who the GA is and always asks how he's doing and stuff like that. So it's just a really cool experience as a dad to have your son be interested in something that you're very, very passionate about.
Yeah, that's amazing. And game film is really important, whether it's watching it with your son or watching it with your students. And I've really liked to watch game film in my past. I played football for like 2 months, but that's besides the point. But even watching it on YouTube now and getting to see players with Baldy and Kurt Warner kind of break down what they're doing from game to game, I think it's so interesting. And someone I really admire is Ed Reed for everything he's done as a leader and also within the film room. Is that something you instill within your students as well, as like trying to get them not just on the field to practice, but really practicing their mentality within the game and within the game room itself?
100%. I always tell the kids, I don't care if you're a linebacker, you better know what the guys in front of you and behind you are doing. And same thing with the D-line. You better know what the guys behind you are doing. Secondary, you better know what the two groups in front of you are doing, because we're all cogs in a wheel. Everybody has a job. Everybody needs to know what they're doing and to do their job. And we quiz our kids every Wednesday on their assignments. So we know who has been watching film, who hasn't. That's a great thing with technology, like with this Huddle and the quick cut program that's coming out now. You can look and see how much film your kid has watched. And so if he's been on for 5 seconds or an hour and 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So for us as coaches, that's just more data for us. If we need to make a switch, if we get a parent to come in, we could just say, here's their grade. Here's how much film they're watching. Yeah. And of course they don't believe us until we actually show them the proof, because, like I say in my recruiting meeting to the parents, like my job is to wake up to make your kid's life miserable every day. And that's really what I want to do, is wake up and just pick on your son and tell him he can't do this when I have to teach 5 classes and have everything else to worry about. But yeah, that's my goal, is just to single your son out, just pick on him, and then they get the wide-eyed look, right? And it's like, no, it's the truth. Yeah.
Give them one question in 27 parts, right?
Right, absolutely. No doubt about it.
What can people learn from a sport like football? I mean, you're helping develop these high school kids, and you're also helping your children develop kind of in the same way by putting them into this arena. What can people, whether it is young or old, learn from the sport of football?
Man, it's a microcosm of life. I think that's why it's the greatest game. I shouldn't say I think. I know that's why it's the greatest game in the world. Because at any given point, you're going to face some type of adversity. And the great thing about football is that huddle of 11 guys, they're working towards a common goal. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter if you're white, black, Asian, Samoan, Tongan, Italian, Scotch, Irish. That doesn't matter. You are in the huddle and you are working towards a common goal. And you really can't say that about any other sport.
It's like Remember the Titans. I mean, it's straight out of Coach Boone, and it's very true. Despite that time period, but it's also true whenever you think about sports, and especially football.
Well, I think that movie is more prevalent today than ever. I watched that with my son last night and was stopping the movie to explain to him, why are they, because he goes, Dad, why are they angry? Why are they fighting? And I had to explain to him, because he's 6. He doesn't know that, in the 70s there was segregated busing in Virginia. So I had to explain what that meant to him and why everybody was angry and why they were fighting. And then, at the end of the movie, what did you learn? And we had to go over what he learned and, the things like that. So it's about education. And we as a team and a staff have been fortunate over this quarantine with everything going on in the country. I reached out to a lot of people. Our team spoke with Ryan Clark, who's on ESPN. Yeah. He Zoomed with our team. Ron Bellamy, who's the head coach at West Bloomfield High School in Michigan. Ron played for the Dolphins and the Lions. He went to Michigan. Really good friend of mine through USA Football. And Napoleon Sykes, who was just coaching with the XFL, the DC Defenders. He played at Wake Forest. He's now coaching at a high school in outside of Baltimore. So I had those guys because, again, and one of the reasons I did it was because, I'm a 41-year-old white guy that grew up on the beach in New Jersey. What do I know about growing up in the rural estates of Naples as an 18-year-old black kid? I don't know anything. So why not bring in guys that have gone through some experiences to teach our kids about how to handle certain things? We had Chef Robert Irvine on to talk to our guys about leadership with our quarterbacks and our wideouts. Aaron Moorhead from the Eagles talked to our quarterbacks and wideouts about, if you want to make the NFL, this is what you have to do. to kind of give them a perspective of a guy that's coaching the NFL right now, what he's looking for. And he won a Super Bowl ring with Peyton Manning and the Colts. So Aaron's done it, So that's one thing I think for any young coach that listens to this, or if you don't know, don't hesitate to ask. Don't be prideful when it comes to topics like that, because you don't want to end up giving the wrong answer.
Of course. And you mentioned the people that you've gotten to work with and talk to and get people to talk about things to your students. Who are some of the big people that you've gotten to meet? If I remember correctly, you've gotten to work with Deion Sanders and kind of get some knowledge from him as well. Are there some other people? What was it like to work with him? And then are there other people that you got to experience someone at that upper echelon level?
I remember my first USA football camp at Monroe High School. I got to work with Mark Collins, who was a cornerback on the 86 and 90 Giants Super Bowl teams.
Okay, great.
And I got to spend a weekend with him, working with him and talking about Belichick and Parcells and kind of how they operated practice and things like that. So to me, anytime you get to work with somebody like that, it's an invaluable experience, because you're only going to have them for a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to try to get as much out of that person as possible. So like working with Deion last summer, getting him for 10 minutes just to talk about, defensive back play and things that, how can I help my guys out? What are some tips you can give me? Having the chance to talk to guys, getting to meet Nick Saban this year in Orlando when I spoke at the Nike clinic, talked to him for 5-10 minutes.
That's awesome.
And then I've become very, very close with Coach Brown at Michigan, and him and I have developed a really good, I met him when I was 23, 24, the young coach, when he was at UMass and Northeastern, and we've stayed in touch ever since. And he's been a great mentor to me. Invaluable experience to be able to pick the phone up and ask him a question or shoot him a text and things like that. So I would say those guys probably, off the cuff, those are probably guys that have made an impression on me. Brent Venables at Clemson, we spent 3 days up there with their coaching staff 2 springs ago. Brilliant guy, probably could be a nuclear physicist. He is phenomenal, just a brilliant dude. The stuff that, you almost run out of ink in your pen when you sit down and take notes for what those guys do. So those guys have been, it's been great, taking life lessons and football lessons from those guys.
At the top of the show, I mentioned that you wrote 2 books. Did you take a lot of what you learned from all these people and kind of put it into these books? I know you're a very defensive-minded coach and everything of that nature. So what was it like to write these books, and what was it like to really spread the knowledge about all these different things?
There's a lot of stuff from Coach Brown and Coach Venables in there, because I kind of model myself as a coach philosophically after what those guys do pressure-wise. Mm-hmm. The book was just kind of like, the first one was just kind of like, I was bored, to be honest with you. Like, I got ADD. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, I got no football. I can't talk to my kids. We can't go work out. I can Zoom with them. That's about it. Mm-hmm. So I said to my wife, I'm going to sit down and just I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it. And the first night I got 25 pages done.
Awesome.
So I said, you know what, let's do it. So I sat down and I got a hold of a buddy of mine that's up in PA. His name's Sean Liotta. He's an offensive coach. He's a head coach at Burrell High School in PA. And he wrote a book, and I just leaned on him like, hey, man, publishing-wise, what are you doing? This, that, the other thing. And he helped me out tremendously. And so I got it done, and I was like floored at the response. It was number 1 on Amazon for 6 weeks.
That's amazing. That's truly amazing.
In the football coaching section. And I got internet. I did a clinic Zoom clinic for German, French, Australian, and Italian football coaches. I've done a bunch of Zooms over the quarantine, and to me, the first one is more for like coaches starting out and kind of learning the basics of some stuff. There's some complicated stuff in there, but it's more basics and practice planning and things like that. And the second one, I felt that I could do a better job than the first one. So I reached out to a couple of my colleagues, and we collaborated on 2 chapters together. And I'm really proud of those 2 chapters that we did. And that book's still selling, today. So it's been a really cool experience. You get to say you're an author, which is pretty neat. Never would have thought I'd be doing that, but try to make the best of the time that you have. And, and it's pretty cool because, my kids are, oh, dad wrote a book, dad wrote 2 books. And, it's neat.
Yeah. And you have that global outreach. You have that outreach within your own community. What about defense really drew you to it? Because there is 2 sides to every coin. A lot of people do like the offense and trying to read it in that way. As a defensive person, you kind of have to read an offense in a similar way. But what really drew it to you in the first place?
Probably because the guy I looked up to the most, my high school head coach, Coach Kaboo, was a defensive guy, and I really think that the time I spent there and got to learn from him and the coaches that I played for, that I got to coach with, that were my colleagues when I first got the job, up at Sayreville. I think that was something that really kind of drove me as far as being part of the defensive side of the football, and then getting to meet Coach Brown at an early age, and then Coach Al Golden, who was at Virginia for a bunch of years, and then he was the head coach at University of Miami. And then, like I said, I've had really good people around me to teach me to do things the right way. And I think that's really what. And I'm an aggressive guy. Like I like to dictate things, and I like to make quarterbacks' lives miserable. I don't know. It's just in my DNA, I guess. But getting to work with Coach Began, I remember, man. I remember being a 23-year-old, kid working with Coach Began as the assistant linebackers coach, back in the day, and just kind of hang on his every word and trying to learn as much from him as I could. And we still joke about that today, now, and with him going back to Sayreville, and which I thought was a great hire because he's a great man, great family man, and I'm so happy for him. And I would be remiss to not talk about Coach Najar. I would not be sitting here today, being the coach I am, if I didn't go through those 4 years with Coach Najar. He really recentered me as a person, not just a coach. Like he kind of, as a young guy, he kind of took me under his wing, and if I made mistakes, he would hold me accountable for them. And he really put me on the right path to be where I'm at today. So I'd be remiss not to mention him in this conversation.
Yeah, and my last year was also his last year as a coach in Sayreville. He was an amazing coach. I mean, Sayreville's record kind of proves it all, the amount of state championships and everything of that nature. You talk about how these different people have gotten to help you. When it comes to the actual NFL side, I remember growing up with players like Dwight Freeney, Bob Sanders, Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, all these people. Who were some of the NFL players when you were growing up that really were like, I want to achieve what they're achieving, or I just really like their style of play?
Oh man, I loved Lawrence Taylor.
He's the best of all time.
I loved Lawrence Taylor. See, now I grew up. I think, and again, obviously everybody, you put somebody else in here, they're going to be biased. That I think if you're between the ages of 39 and 42, you grew up in the best sports era ever. Because you're talking about the 80s with the 49ers, the Giants, the Bears. You're talking about the Celtics and Lakers. Then you get the beginning of the Jordan Bulls, that first run of the Jordan Bulls. And then, you get the Yankees starting to get out of it a little bit. Obviously the Mets were good from the mid-'80s on. Especially growing up in New Jersey, to have the Giants. I can remember watching the Giants game, the 86 NFC Championship game with my dad against the Redskins, and we had the Mets were playing the Astros, I believe, in the NLCS.
Okay.
That same night. So we had the radio on and the TV on going back and forth. But yeah, Lawrence Taylor, no doubt. Mike Singletary. My son's got an autographed Singletary jersey in his room.
That's awesome.
And then going into high school, into college, was Mike Allstott. Mike Allstott he was my dude.
Train.
He was my dude. I wore number 40 in college my sophomore year because of Mike Allstott. Try to get the face mask, the same face mask. And ironically, So funny story. My brother-in-law, him and his family, they own a paper company up in Tampa,
Mm-hmm.
and they get tickets for stuff and things like that. So we go to some bowl game in the Trop where the Rays play, and he's like, hey, Mike Allstott's going to be here, and I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, I know you. This is your guy, right? And I said, yeah. He's like, well, we're going to go to the ESPN tent, meet Mike Allstott. I'm like, I feel like I was like a 6-year-old kid.
That's awesome.
Got to meet him, took a picture with him. He autographed my press pass for me. And then for Christmas, my brother-in-law did like this 3D picture, which is also hanging up in my son's room, a 3D picture of him running the football in the home Tampa Bay uniform, and he autographed it for me. So, I mean, that meeting him was
dream come true.
I remember meeting Lawrence Taylor when I was like 8 years old. I was one of the ball boys for this Giants versus Cops fundraiser thing in our high school.
Yeah.
But, you're 8. I got him to
It's not the same feeling.
Whatever. Yeah. But, yeah, I used to watch before every Pop Warner game. I used to watch Lawrence Taylor highlights, growing up.
Yeah, something to get you hyped up. I mean, he truly is one of the best of all time, if not the best linebacker of all time. His instincts, his aggression, he was just ready to get the ball out of the other team's hands as soon as possible.
No
and that's something you have to admire.
Changed the game of football forever.
Yeah, and you see players like a Troy Polamalu kind of going on his own things. Even now, Jamal Adams, Jets getting rid of him and all that. But still, he is one of those players.
I don't mind that. I like this Joe Douglas guy. I think he's going to do a good job as a GM.
I like him too. We'll see how everything pans out. Everything takes 3 to 5 years to find out what actually happens.
Got to get rid of Adam Gase. Adam, to me, you're hiring a guy that couldn't win in the division as a Dolphins coach. Why is he going to win as a Jets coach? That's when they didn't hire Mike McCarthy.
That's exactly who I wanted to.
I was like, you got to be kidding me. But typical Jets, right?
Jets are gonna jet, right? It's just how it goes.
Yep.
We talked about sports movies a little bit earlier. I wanted to hear your top few football movies. We mentioned Rudy earlier. You mentioned Remember the Titans. Are there any others that really stand out to you?
The Program. When I was growing up, The Program was the movie. That was the jam. That was the pregame. That was the whole thing. The Program. Alvin Mack, Joe Kane. Kane is able. That was James Conn as the head coach and tipping over the Gatorade, cooler in the locker room. And that, trying to think, Any Given Sunday is also another classic one with Al Pacino and James and Dennis Quaid. I would say those movies right there. Remember the Titans, Rudy, Any Given Sunday, and I just think those are my top 4, definitely.
That's a great list. And I think that's all we have for today. Mr. Gibbs, I really thank you so much for coming on. You reached out to me for this one, and I really appreciate that. It was really nice to catch up with you. It's been 5 years. Again, thank you for coming on. Guys, thank you for watching. This is a new series where we're going to do more one-on-one stuff with a bunch of different great people. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.